You're listening to Honey and Hustle, a video podcast that inspires the dreamers, creators, and hustlers to make a business from their passions. I'm Angela Hollowell, and I'm a visual storyteller based in Durham, North Carolina. I sit down with creative entrepreneurs, nonprofit founders, and small business owners as they share their stories, the lessons they've learned throughout their careers, and how they've worked to make a positive impact. Hey everyone, we are filming season 3 of the Honey and Hustle podcast live at the Durham Bottling Co. right in downtown Durham. We're about to get into a great conversation, but before we do that, I'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to share this episode with someone who you think might get some value from it. Feel free to tag me on the podcast on social media, and I'll be sure to put those links on the video and in the description below. If you're listening to the show, please consider leaving us a review on Podchaser, Apple Podcast, or Spotify. It helps others find the show and lets me know how I'm doing at this video podcast thing. If you'd like to support the show, be sure to check out our affiliate links, shop our merch, and subscribe to the Honeypot newsletter and this YouTube channel, all at the links in the description. Without further ado, let's get into it. So thank you so much for joining me here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to come out to the Durham Bottling Co. This afternoon with your
There's nothing in here, but I'm going to pretend like there is because it makes me happy to hold something. Isn't this great? Are you selling these?
I am, on my website.
So buy this on her website. How cute is this? Honey and Hustle. I love it.
Yes.
It's a cute logo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Honestly, I just feel like you should be interviewing me because you've done all the things. You've been with ReCity, which is another co-working space, more specifically for nonprofits. You've been with Leadership Triangle, which is kind of the premier gathering kind of cohort here in the Triangle to both learn about the Triangle and to develop leadership skills alongside other founders. And you've done some work with just incredible other organizations. I don't want to spoil the story. So for people who don't know who you are, Jess, could you just kind of tell us a little bit about your journey with working with different organizations here in the Triangle, and also kind of your reasoning for, even though you've had this incredible career and are still thriving right now with working with different organizations, why you still felt like having Jess & Co., having your own kind of agency and control over your own narrative was really, really important for you.
Yeah, I love that question. I'll make a correction in the narrative about ReCity.
Yeah.
It's an important correction, but it's also part of the journey. So I think it's good.
Yeah.
My career, this is always a scary question because when you open up Pandora's box on somebody's like why, they want to take you all the way back. They do. We're all like, when I was 3. But honestly, my business and how I move professionally today is driven by being a 4th generation entrepreneur. So I've been working since I was 6 in a small town in Ohio with a family who was successful business owners, but they continued to pivot and reinvent themselves and figure out market shifts and then do a new thing. And they had a roller rink to auction house to appraisal firm to a real estate company to becoming real estate investors. I mean, they did all the things based on what the demands were in the market. And so not knowing what I was learning as a child, because I was just working and watching and observing, I learned a lot that serves me to this day. I mean, I was coming from a talk earlier and used so much of the lessons that I learned from my grandfather in that talk. I've worked, as you said, I've worked for lots of companies, nonprofit, for-profit, from names that people are recognized. I was in the sports and entertainment industry. I worked at General Electric as a financial analyst. I worked in partnership with the Bengals, the Browns, and the Cavs when I was in Ohio, and we produced HBCU football classics to raise money for those schools. So I got a chance to do both the nonprofit, like working with with educators, and at the same time got exposure to the sports and entertainment world in a way that was just like we worked with BET and all that. And so that at a young age, having that kind of exposure teaches you just like the house is on fire. You're just trying to do all the things and figure it out because you're young and you're ambitious and you're hungry. And again, taking those lessons, pulling them through, what's important to me, what matters to me, what doesn't. and applying it to the next gig, right? So well, I moved here about 17 years ago, and I do the math, actually 16 years ago. I have a 20-year-old son, and when we moved here, it was like reinventing all over again, starting all over, right? I went through a divorce. It was like, who is Jess? And, your question is is about the journey, and it's about the why, but a lot of it is about just being a woman, trying to figure out how to take the talent and the skills that I've been acquiring and not hide them, but frame them up in a way that I think is most valuable, and it honors my core values. That's it.
Yeah.
And that isn't an easy journey because people want to tell you your place in the world. They want to tell you what you do and how to do it. And sometimes they might be really close to being on the mark, but maybe they're a little bit off, and you're like, okay, and you kind of, you go off. But then you're like, but really I'm called to do, I should just turn right a little bit. I'm really close, but I'm not there, which is why I started my company. Because I wanted to really inform my team and my work the way I wanted to inform it. That's what I said to you. Like, I think, I'm going to put out into the world what I want to be out into the world, and not have somebody dictate that. So I've had incredible work experiences. Don't get me wrong; they have been amazing. Leadership Triangle being one of them. I learned a lot of leadership development with mentors that I got access to, company executives, just by nature of the job, right? It's a very, very fortunate position because you just by nature of your role get a chance, you get exposed. Right? And so that has served me well, and I built really good relationships. And that goes back to my grandfather. My grandfather was highly respected, beloved. He had incredible integrity, and he worked his ass off. He had work ethic, and he expected us all to have work ethic. He had a farm, and he had a company, and he had multiple companies. And I don't know how you put your overalls on at night, chopping wood and doing the things, and the next morning you put a suit on and you go to the bank and you do the things with your whatever he was doing, right? I watched him do that day in and day out, be two different kinds of person, but his whole self. So there was really even if I wanted to, I couldn't be any different, because it at some point that intersectionality of just who I am over time came to a head. And it came to a head during the pandemic. So I left my role as executive director of Leadership Triangle, a role I loved and enjoyed and was one of the most fulfilling ever, to start my company, because I was being called and pulled into this space for women empowerment, professional development for women, and helping women navigate their reinvention stories. And so I do that mostly. That's what the public sees. Like if you go to my Instagram or whatever, you're going to see me loving up on women, just like championing their work and reminding them they have a voice that matters and that the world needs more of it. And then on the other side, I have a consulting arm where I do stakeholder engagement and reputational brand assessments for companies. So it's twofold. Twofold. Now, ReCity. I love ReCity, but I never worked for ReCity. I actually worked with American Underground. So I worked for American Underground, which is how I got access to, Google and some of the brands that you'll see on my bio. And that's where I was one of 4 co-founders of Black Wall Street Homecoming. So Talib and Tobias and Dee and I, we co-founded Black Wall Street Homecoming through our relationship with American Underground. ReCity invited me to be a co-host on the podcast. And I'm a big fan of their work and couldn't say no, because it was all around justice and justice-led, justice-oriented work, whatever that looks like. So it could be around redlining and trees, right? It could be around affordable housing or whatever. So we went deep on that podcast, and I learned a lot and was grateful to have the opportunity to work with them.
Yeah. So for people who don't know what we're talking about, it is called The Just Podcast. And
it is called The Just Podcast. And I have another podcast called Reinvention Road Trip. I have 2 podcasts. The Just Podcast, which is around social justice issues, where we get to interview amazing people, pillars in our community, who are doing great work in the nonprofit sector primarily, but not exclusively, and uncover their stories and let them tell their stories and how they're impacting the community. And then Reinvention Road Trip is my other podcast, which is designed for women I interview incredible women like yourself who are like doing the thing that people would want to be inspired by. And so, because we need to be inspired by each other, right? That's we don't hear enough of that. We don't hear enough of those powerful and important stories, particularly women of color.
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, thank you for the compliment. I feel accomplished now, even more so.
Yes, girl.
Absolutely. But that's the point, though, right? To make other people feel good.
Is.
I think sometimes we sleep on ourselves. Sometimes we are so caught up in our head, so caught up in the moment that we don't take the time to look around and say, wow, like I've come a long way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even you just now, like you took me through almost 20 years worth of, your work and your life and what's led you to this point. And sometimes it's good to look back. Sometimes it can be scary to look back. Because sometimes you may feel like, wow, I thought I was going to be further along. Or, I thought, or I didn't realize I'd come so far. And, these were days I dreamed about. What am I complaining about? And so it's easy to get in your head. And so sometimes I think it's good just to have people here just for them to get out of their head sometimes. And realize, like, no, like, people are looking at you right now. Like, you're doing great.
Yes.
So with you're talking about your business, and you do have a book out, talking about reinvention for women. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have a book. So I have a book out that is a dating book. It's called Oh Lords. I don't have a copy of it. And I also have a workbook that's called the 28-Day Reinvention Road Trip. So this is the workbook that's not for sale. You have to go through our program to get access to this beautiful 90-page full color book. It's gorgeous. But it takes you day by day by day by day through 28 days and takes you through these exercises with a cohort and the power of reinvention, and does exactly what you just described about 2 minutes ago about looking back.
Okay.
We spend a whole week on that, a whole week on what we call crucible moments and like discovering the fire within. Oftentimes we are so stuck in our head, stuck in the present, worrying about what we're going to do tomorrow, and the way to get out of that narrative and to disrupt that very potentially toxic habit, because it's not productive, potentially toxic habit, is to sit down, and we do it for a week, and we map out our crucible moments that have been intense, have created a space where we had to decide, are we going to be better tomorrow than we are today? Are we going to make it out of here? And we have to dig deep. Like it could be a death, it could be moving across the country. It's the crucible moments are those transformative fire moments that nobody else knows about, mostly, that we lose sleep over, and they change us forever. And the goal is, it's like wrestling with, these crucible moments are like wrestling with the person that we are today, trying to become the person we're meant to become. It's that wrestle. And so if we get through that week, women look back and they're like, wow, I'm badass. Like I am so accomplished. I know what adversity looks like, and I got through it. I get my voice now for the first time. I understand my contribution. I know it matters that I'm in this room. That fire comes through that week, because you're forced to look at your accomplishments. You're forced to look what you survived in some cases, what you've championed, and how you've won. And that's important.
Yeah.
So that's the workbook that, again, isn't for sale, but it's part of the program, which people can check out on the website after. The book that I have out is on Amazon. We just got another award, so I'm very proud. So thank you for bringing it up, because we got a People's Choice Award for some publishing company. I don't even know. They just sent us a note, which is exciting. That book's on dating, girl.
Yes.
That's a whole nother,
I noticed.
That's a whole nother thing. I mean, that's reinvention at a different level, right? So I co-authored that book during the pandemic. We just, wrote it, and because it was just something fun to do with a friend, and we archetype 8 male archetypes, or dating archetypes, but they're gender agnostic, so it can be whoever, right? But we will focus on men. That's what we call Oh Lords. And you got your good guys, you got your cheaters, you got your regular old folks that really aren't doing nothing, right? You got the good guy but not my guy.
Yeah.
So we have various types of encounters that you might have out in the dating world, and then we tell our stories. So with each chapter, I give a personal story of a man that I dated. Mostly, I give 2 stories, I think, every chapter, because I dated like a champ in my 30s, girl. I dated like a champ. Okay, so there were stories that my friends were like, "Did you talk about such?" I was like, "He didn't even make the book, and he should have, but he didn't make the book." There are people who did not make my book, but I had plenty of stories to pull from. So it's fun. It's light reading. It's a lot of fun. You get to know me at a level that most I was like cringeworthy. I was like, I hope my mom doesn't I wanted her to read it, but I was like, I don't want to talk about it. Just read it and then don't talk to me.
That's funny.
So, anyways, that's the book. It's fun and it is empowering because it's all about agency. We talk about in that book always about having a voice and getting agency over your life and stop repeating these same bad habits. You know, I was in a bad relationship, like it was a relationship that lasted 10 years, and he, you know, was married but separated. All of the things I'm comfortable saying is in the book. And it was this gaslighting, constant gaslighting. And so I would see other people and come back, and he's like on the verge of getting the divorce. All the things that we know as women, we go through this shit. And I learned so much in that. It was like, girl, get it. You are. Why do you continue to put yourself in the passenger seat of your own life and let somebody else drive you everywhere?
Yeah. Into
walls and round corners and back to the beginning, and you just along for the ride. And so, at some point, there was a moment, an awakening for me that changed everything. And I'm dating now, and I'm in a healthy relationship, but. You have to learn, as women, we have to have agency over our lessons. It's not everybody else's fault. We have choices every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, girl. Jesus Christ. First of all, I'm 28. Let's just start there.
Okay.
I feel like I need to be dating as a champ.
Yes, you need to be dating like a champ, like J-Lo. That girl. Good night. Yeah.
Need a new one every week, like J-Lo.
J-Lo's got stories for days.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's fun. I think there's nothing wrong with
great.
owning that and every part of it. I just think you touched on so many things as it relates to like how we can tell our story, right? What parts we can dwell on and what parts we can highlight and what parts we can really learn from and use to help other people learn and things like that. I definitely think there's parts of our stories that we shy away from sometimes.
Because we have shame. Because I couldn't tell that part of my story about, you know, what I said about being in a relationship with a man who was married but separated for 10, all that. I couldn't have told that in my 30s. I was still working through it. But now I'm okay with it because I learned lessons. So I'm not ashamed anymore. There is power in your story.
Yeah.
And to your point, a lot of people aren't comfortable sharing those things, and they don't have to. They literally don't have to do anything.
Right.
But I think there is work to be done around the shame that comes with our stories, that if we can step out of that and flip it, it can empower us.
Yeah.
And that's special because it elevates you to the next level because we have one life to live. I don't want to be cycling around the toilet bowl on some mess that isn't helpful.
That's fair. That's a good analogy.
I mean,
yeah, that's fair. So going back to you talking about, you know, being a fourth generation entrepreneur, you know, representation is so important. And I think sometimes it has been hard for me to find the language to express why. Because representation doesn't necessarily mean exclusion, right? Like we hear about Jesse Owens, who was this great Olympian, but then he died as a janitor, though.
Yes, he did.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, man, you see these great people that are doing great things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that story ends up happy, you know, or that they benefit from being the person that people see, right? But when it comes to, you know, I guess like in my own way, trying to find language for why it's so important, it's because just for people to see that and be influenced by that, leaders breed other leaders, right? So in the same way that your family influenced you, it's kind of the same way that you're working with these women in the cohort to not only be the best version of themselves and acknowledge the best versions of themselves, but use that to influence their community and influence their lives, influence their jobs, and all the people that they come in contact with.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit more about how you kind of started off saying like, okay, like I'm ready to do my own thing. I'm ready to focus on women. I know you said the pandemic, but kind of what else was kind of your mindset once you made that decision? What was that next step?
I was working on this for a couple of years. So, you know, when you see the move, and this is with everything, when we make moves, people think that was the moment.
Oh, that was the first moment.
That was the first moment.
No, this
they
started
have no
years.
idea. This is not an overnight anything. Like you're working on it. If you're wise, if you're wise, you are working on a plan to take that step, right? And here was my formula. I know some of it was physical, like I just felt like it was time. And then when I felt like it was time, I didn't do it. And I waited a little bit longer to like test and verify that it was time. So you have to trust your gut, but verify. And verify means, are you financially ready? Do you have the support system around you? Is your mental health ready to take on this next chapter? Because risk can be can be ridden with anxiety if you don't have the mental health to stand you up during it, right? Where's my son? Is he okay? Like, is everything in his life fine? So, like, I was testing and poking at everything around because I felt like I was ready, but it was trust it, but let's verify. So I would pop around all the things that mattered, the things that would potentially pull me out of the game. And that's what you need to be honest about it. Just because you want to do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing. Yeah. It may not be the time to do the thing. So what is it you want to do, and what has historically held you back? What are your roadblocks? And name them, and then say, okay, what happens if that pops up? What are you gonna do? And then you figure out your plan. What's your plan of action? I'm gonna call a person. I'm gonna have a reserve account. I'm gonna whatever you need to do, and you put that all in place. And then when you're ready, and you'll probably be at about 80% because you're never gonna be ready. Especially women, we don't do a thing because we're not at 100%. So you get to about 80%. This is my formula. Other people have different percentage, and then you jump off the comfort. I call it a comfort cliff. So you've been on that comfort cliff. You've done the work. You're at the edge. It's time to go.
Yeah, but I think to your point, one, like, I don't even think I was at 80%. I just was also at the point where I was ready to not be comfortable in that way. Yeah. So I was like, my percent is different. And also I have a lot less to worry about. I don't have kids. So I was like, 60 sounds good. Let's go.
That's a good point.
60
That's
sounds
a
good.
really good point. Yeah.
60 sounds like,
yep. You were like, I'm at 60. That's good enough. I mean, that's fair. I think that's great. Yeah.
But the other half is like, to going back to Jess and Co., you were saying like this wasn't the first decision that you made in terms of going for it. At that time, it just looked like it was the first one. Right. Jess and Co. has been around for years, right? Yeah. And I think sometimes when we get caught up in these like side hustles per se, the perception, at least what I feel like the mainstream perception of a side hustle is, one, to make you more income, right? Because your full-time job is not providing that.
For sure.
And then the other half is, well, if you're passionate about it and you're serious about it, this is to replace my full-time income, right? So this is to be my full-time job at some point. And a lot of people, myself included, Andrew Studio was not my side hustle for very long in comparison to what people may think of in terms of side hustles. I think my short-term side hustle phase is what people think is the mainstream, and that's really not the case either. I think a side hustle can be as long as you want it to be, until as long as it takes you to reach that 80%, that 60%, or that percentage that you feel comfortable saying, okay, I'm ready to make this move, and this is the right time, and I have the right resources and support system to move me forward. But that doesn't mean that side hustle is any less valid or important or necessary.
1,000%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, Helios, who's housed here, right?
Yeah.
Helios, they talk about necessity-driven entrepreneurship. So many of us are attempting businesses to close the gap at the end of the month. It's necessity-driven entrepreneurship. So they have a job, but then they're like, but I can do this. I bake cakes, or I can do barber on the side, or whatever. And we're closing gaps and do what we need to do to meet the needs of our families. And I think that can spin out and become a beautiful full-time deal, right? And where you can start to scale it and you can replace income. That's one thing. You laid them out beautifully. I think, the hustle, there's a lot of criticism around side hustles, or people saying the side hustle is your full-time job, and your full-time job is just the side hustle, right? Yeah. And then that makes you feel like, that could make someone feel like what they're doing, they're not putting their whole heart into, they're not committed. Right. You know what I mean? That I should do more, I want more, they should want more. I mean, some people just have a little Etsy account. They're making things on the weekend. It brings them joy. It creates fulfillment. They're making a little extra money. They're going on vacation with it. Let's not shame them into be like, why don't you have more ambition? And you should want to replace your job. And no, I think it's great. I think people need to find their passion. I think if they can make a little money off their passion, wonderful. For me, again, what I was doing, I loved. It just wasn't, I knew you get to this point where you know that what you have inside you, like the things that you keep thinking about, you wake up in the middle of the night, it's on your mind, and over and over and over, it's like nagging at you.
Yeah.
You're like, that's more than a notion.
Yeah.
This is, you see people doing it around you, you're like, well, why can't I? And then once that I couldn't answer that question anymore, I was like, well, then you're just not, like, you're scared of something. And that's when I did work. And I think, again, I worked a full-time job and had a business for, 10 years maybe. I think I started a little side thing when I moved here and developed a software for Omega Psi Phi International Fraternity and helped them with their conclaves. And so I would do their housing, and I worked with a friend in Raleigh, and we developed this little software, and it was like Travelocity for the Qs, right? So they would go on, they book their housing, and I made a good grip off of that. I did that for like 8 years. I was like, all right, they bought me a car. Essentially, right? Like, and they didn't buy me a car. They paid me enough that I could, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was a good grip on the side.
Yeah.
But at no point was I like, I want to do this right here forever. I was like, no, I just happened to see an opportunity. I put it together.
Yeah.
It was what it was. It was a good run. And then off I kept, so I was doing a lot because I was a single mom.
Yeah.
I got divorced, and it was me and Trey and my kid. And so I was like, well, what can I do to make the life that we want? Right? And I was like, I'm skilled, I'm capable, I have talent, I'm educated.
Yeah.
We put something together, and then that led to something else, and then Jess & Co. So, but at no point did I ever guilt myself that I should be doing more. But then there was this moment with the company where I said it's time. It just, I couldn't get the voice out of my head. I couldn't drown it out anymore, and so it would have made me crazy. to not step out. I would have felt some kind of way, like I was betraying myself.
Right.
And I don't know for you, like that, I think that's a good word, like betrayal.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is, because you're denying yourself.
Correct.
Your full potential and all that you could be. Not even potential, but all that you actually are.
Yeah.
And all that you, just walking in that. It's sometimes, I've said this and I didn't realize the power of what I said when I said it, but I was like, to recognize, and I am religious, or, I was raised Baptist, it's like to recognize where God has brought me from, and to recognize that this talent is not something that I could have ever, solely done on my own, right?
Yes.
To deny that, and to deny that this is something I think about all the time and want to find a way forward with. Like, just because nobody else that I know has done it doesn't mean it's not possible.
Yeah, everything that exists wasn't possible at one point.
Yeah.
People thought was impossible. It didn't exist, and then all of a sudden it was created.
Yeah.
So
it's like, it is an affront to the Creator who has given you the power to create. Why would you not go after it?
That's right.
And that's not everybody's thing, and that doesn't mean you necessarily need to be a full-time creative entrepreneur. It just means that, you should definitely listen to yourself too.
Yes.
And be honest about that.
That's right. Yeah. It doesn't mean it doesn't have to flourish into a full-time business.
Yeah.
But if you're a gift and you're making a little money, and you're finding fulfillment and joy using a gift that you can't use in your full-time job. Maybe you got a degree in accounting and you're an accountant and a CPA and you're doing the good work and doing my taxes and all. They're not paying my taxes. That would be nice. But doing my taxes, right? You're doing the thing. That's a good work. That's a good work. But if you have another side to your brain, I have a good friend who has both sides of her brain. She's an artist and she's a COO. And so for her, when she's not working, she's painting, right? She's doing scrapbooky stuff or whatever she does. But she needs to do that. She needs to use her hands. She needs to think creatively. She needs to let it all out on the canvas. And she can sell them. She can put them on Etsy. She can do whatever. That's not the point for her.
Yeah.
The point is that she has a gift and a skill.
Yeah.
It fulfills her deeply.
Yeah.
And the process is what matters for her.
Yeah.
So, just because it doesn't become a thing doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about creative partnerships, because you've had quite a few, because you co-hosted the Jess podcast, correct? And then you've co-written a book. Yeah. And I'm sure you've co-done a lot of other things. So it's just kind of like, what has been your approach to creating successful partnerships with people of all different personalities, backgrounds, genders, all the things?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it goes back to the secret sauce for me is there's two things. One is there's two things and something you should know. I am not an extrovert. I come off like all the things, right? I do public speaking. I have my couple podcasts, so I am very public in the sense that I use my voice. Mm-hmm. But I am an introvert by nature. I can only do so much. So it is a skill that I have worked on. I used to be very much an extrovert, but over time, having a child, raising a child, all the things, crucible moments, you change. You're not always the same person. So I've evolved over time. So one thing you should know is that is true. And so it is work for me to build relationships. I work at it. Mm-hmm. And I'm very strategic. So I have the gift of connecting with people and kind of like listening to like what they're saying and then saying it back to you. And that is endearing and it's not manipulation. It's like, that's what I would want. I want somebody to listen to me. Yeah. Right as I'm talking. I want you to be actually engaged and thinking like, or curious. And so I'm very curious about people and about things I don't fully understand. It can drive people crazy because I'll be asking like, I'll do a follow-up and it'll be like, help me understand. I'll say this all the time. People drives them crazy. I'll be like, help me understand what you just said. Like, help me understand. And they're like, are you making fun of me? I'm like, I am not. I'm literally asking you to help me understand because I want to know it better.
Have you heard of Chris Voss?
No, I don't think so.
So Chris Voss, he was like this FBI negotiator, and he has a master class. For people that watch the show, they probably... I love Masterclass. So Chris Voss is actually the original reason I bought Masterclass, because he has a class on negotiation. Oh. And he does this thing called like mirroring, where he's like, once you get good at it, you'll just do it without thinking, where you'll repeat the last like 3 words somebody said in a different order, and like that'll prompt them to give you more information. And that just sounds like what you're talking about.
Yeah, and like without any education on it. But that is, you watch it and you kind of understand and you know what feels good to you, like how you want to engage with somebody. You sort of give it back to them. Yeah. And when you build those kinds of relationships, you start to build trust, and people want to work with you. Yeah. And that's the thing that I can't get young people to understand. I really can't. I'm like, young people get so caught up in their own ways they want to do a thing. And I'm like, you don't live in this isn't a millennial shot. This is just young people. Yeah. I mean, my kid's a whatever, Gen Z, whatever he is. But it's not all about you. And so you have to, if you want to move ahead, you have to imagine what the other person on the other side of the table needs. Mm-hmm. What do they need? What are they not saying to you because they don't necessarily trust you or they don't want to be vulnerable? How can you help them be their best self in that conversation? Yeah. And then the doors of opportunity open. So partnerships come to me not because I'm seeking them out, but because I just value people, and people think, oh, I'd like to work with Jess on this. Yeah. Or have you thought about calling Jess? She'd be great for this. And I mean, I don't know what we're doing, but you call me and then I'll be like, okay, that sounds cool. Let's do it. I'm down. Let's do it. And then that leads to the next thing. Yeah. So that's the creation, I think, of partnerships, is relationship building. Yeah. Honest, authentic relationship building where you're not centering yourself, but you're centering the other person. And that is a skill. Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes, too, it can be discouraging because sometimes people will get frustrated. But I think even that frustration tells you something about them. It tells you how seriously they take it. It tells you maybe what interactions they've had in the past when they've talked about things that are interesting to them. Yeah. And it can be off-putting to, like when you're first starting out and first developing a relationship, to have that kind of rebuttal or what you perceive to be a rebuttal, like early on when you're trying to get to know someone. Yes. And I'm also introverted. I mean, like, I get it. Nobody wants to feel like they're bothering someone or like frustrating someone or aggravating someone just by asking questions when you're just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, just curious. Yeah. But it helps in the long run, because it's like, if this coming up now, it's probably going to come up again. Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, it decreases the chance of a miscommunication, which is also, to me, even more frustrating than somebody asking me for
clarification.
1,000%.
Yeah,
1,000%. And then you try to explain that. Like, if you do it this way, you're actually saving yourself time.
Yeah.
And you've created a genuine relationship. And I will tell you, I have a million, well, I'm an exaggerator, so I have many examples. I'm trying to really work on that. I have many examples of one relationship which led to another relationship, which led to a check, which led to another check, which led to another, I'm talking about money now when I say check, right? Like relationships that I'm telling you, I could do a timeline. I could do an entire class because I haven't done any actual work on my business. It's all referral. I mean, I'm out on social media, but my other side of my business is all referral. And it's this to that, to this to that, to this to that. And y'all, that is from people trusting my work and knowing me as a human and wanting to work with me. It is not about, no one knows what my degree is. No one ever asks.
Beautiful. Like, yeah.
No one.
Yeah.
I don't know the last time someone asked me do you have I don't know the last time somebody asked me if I have a degree.
Yeah.
I do. But in marketing and management, I mean, you know what I mean? From a small private school 24 years ago. So everything I learned is not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no one asks.
Yeah. Yeah, people know I moved here from Alabama. They don't know where. They don't know where I went to school. Half the time, they're just like,
they don't.
She's from Alabama. Like,
This is more important that we like you.
Yeah.
That we want to work with you. That we trust you.
Yeah.
Right? And then maybe that'll come up later, but it doesn't matter at that point because you've demonstrated that you can deliver a product.
Exactly.
You can deliver on your word. And that's all people are paying for that. They're not paying for the paper you got for in my case, 20 years ago. So,
Yeah. But that's real. And I do think like that's kind of where I think successful my age millennial entrepreneurs are. I feel like Gen Z more like, I would say like 90+% all online. A lot of the people that support them have no idea who they are in real life.
Yeah.
But for me and people around my age, so like late 20s, 30s, early 40s, they have done really well when they have been able to marry having a really solid online personal brand and a really solid in-person network of people who actually know them, can speak to them, have worked with them, and are willing to put their names in rooms that they're not in yet.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I think, and to me, that is my ideal way. I'm glad that I'm in this era of people, right?
Yep.
Because the online world, and I think it's great. I think it's a great opportunity, don't get me wrong, but it's also fickle. You know what I'm saying? Those people don't know you personally.
Yeah.
And if you do something they don't like, they can just as easily pull their support. Whereas like people in real life, they're going to at least talk to you. They're going to ask you if something comes up. You know, they're going to be more willing to work with you if they know who you are on a personal basis.
Yeah.
And those things, I mean, it's also just like, okay, that relationship leads to another relationship that leads to a check. That first relationship could have been 5 years in the making before you ever even got introduced to the second person.
Yeah, and you may have done it for free.
Yeah.
In my case, that's true. I offered my services, a talent for free, which people don't advise you to do that. I say 1,000 times that's not real. You should do that. You don't give away your life.
Yeah.
But there's moments of lightning in a bottle where you see somebody that you're like, I would love to work with you and I would love to connect with you. I'd like to be in this space with you. How can I support your mission? Yeah. I'm willing to give you my time. Yeah. And that has led to hundreds, if I did the math, hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million in actual real revenue for my business, for my family, because I said I would work on a festival, a healthcare festival many years ago for free. I cannot underscore that enough because we just want everything to be fast, easy. We want to get paid for everything. And I'm saying to you, the distinction, your differential value proposition comes from doing things that other people aren't willing to do. Yeah. And sometimes it's doing a little something over here for free while you're getting paid for 5 things over here until those things meet. Yeah. And lightning in the bottle. Yeah. I feel like too, part of it was, at least for me, you know, I did things for free that I knew I wanted to do for money at some point. Yes. And early on, you know, I did things for money that maybe I wasn't as passionate about, but hey, I got bills to pay. Yes. I had bills to pay. So it's like, at some point, you know, obviously, thankfully, they came together and I was doing work for money that I wanted to do and was passionate about. But like, yeah, it is not the pretty part. And I guess to me, even free, I mean, it all depends. It depends on, you know, the scope of work. If somebody wants you to do something egregious, then yeah, no, maybe not. But like, if it's within reason, if it's within your ability to give it,
Yeah, and it's something that you know you want to do, somebody you know you would love the chance to work with on a paid project in the future, and this be a good way for you to get to know them, low stakes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot
I think there's a difference between doing a favor and being strategic.
Yeah.
And there's at no point, I mean, I do favors for friends, but even then, I mean, I'm careful about my time now because time really is money at this point in my career. So I have to be very careful about it. But strategy is very different. Being strategic about what your move you're trying to make, which paid off for me and has many times different examples over. Versus just doing a favor because I said something on a podcast that you're like, well, I guess I'll just do this for free. No, what you just said is perfect. It has to make sense. Yeah. Align with your vision and add to your portfolio or create an opportunity for being paid later. Yeah. Tenfold. It's an exponential value return. Yeah. That's what you're looking for. Yeah. So,
and we're not talking about exposure. We're not talking about like, well, if you do this, you'll get exposure. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually like this is something, even if I don't per se get exposure, this post doesn't go viral that I did, or this festival doesn't, not everybody associates me with this festival. Correct. The people who need to know.
That's exactly right.
You know what I mean?
Knew. And in about 3 years later, I should do the math on this. This is a good story. I'm going to go back and tell it right the next time with timelines and stuff. But it was a couple of years. It wasn't like in 6 months. In like 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years, she calls me out of the blue. I'll never forget. I was in the car. And I was talking to her, and I was like, Sylvia, I was like, hey, girl. She was like, hey. She was like, I really can't. I can't work this festival. I can't do this thing. I'm supposed to be in charge of it, whatever. Would you mind coming in and do it? I was like, great. It was my first contract with her. Mm-hmm. That contract led to a second year's contract, which led to a full-time job at Capitol Broadcasting, which led to American Underground, which led to Black Wall Street, which led to Leadership Triangle, which led to my company. Which led to exposure to Google, exposure to all of the majors out in California. I mean, it's just one phone call. And the reason why she remembered me, she's like, I remember you did that healthcare festival a couple of years ago, and I know you can pull this off, and I'm in a pinch. Mm. She's like, but this ain't free, girl, I got you. So she paid me a little contract, right? And the wheels on that journey of my life took off in a time when I needed it. I mean, we didn't get into my personal story, but financially during the 2008-2009, I was nearly homeless. And there was a point, I mean, that call could not have come at a better time. You talk about being faithful and knowing that there's something bigger than you. Mm-hmm. It will align. It works in your favor. God is He's conspiring for us. Yep. We have to listen. And we have to honor sort of the journey. Yeah. Like lean into the journey, pick up the phone when it rings. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. So going back to your book a little bit and being a writer, had you ever written before? Like what you said it was something fun, but like writing is still in some ways work. So like how was that experience for publishing your first book?
Yeah, it's a whole new thing. It was a lot of fun to learn about because publishing is its own industry, right? So, and I had no exposure to it. So you asked me two questions. One is I love writing. Okay. And I ruminate, and it makes me crazy. So I love to write. I'm a creative writer. Okay. So the book that I wrote doesn't demonstrate like the creative writing side of me, but I'm actually writing another book that does. And I love language, and I love painting pictures with words, and I love getting a sentence right. I love telling stories. I love it. I love to write. So wasn't the writing part was fun to a point until I ruminate and then I go, I can't get out of my head. Mm-hmm. And that's why it was really nice to have a co-author, because she helped me stay on task and like pushed me to finish and be like, girl, it's fine. Keep it moving. Can we turn this manuscript in? The other side of your question is the publishing side, which was so much fun to learn, research and interview people, and it's a machine. So once you have a book, you have to market your book. Mm-hmm. It is a second phase of a business. Right. So we were running a business and putting a lot of money into it. And so you have to invest in your projects. It is not a notion to write a book. Like, you need to have money. Yeah. If you're going to do it right. You need to have time, and you need to have a vision for what it is you want it to be. Otherwise, it's just a book that you wrote that maybe your friends read. Yeah. You spent thousands of dollars on, and you feel good about it. And if that's enough, like you just want to be an author, then all day long, go ahead. People spend money on golf. They spend that kind of money on golf. And they ain't got nothing to show for it, except for, I don't know, whatever that's called, the score, whatever it is. And I have golf clubs. I should know. What is it called? You know what I mean? Like, it's their golf. What's it called? I'm like, or in the comment section when you see this on YouTube, please let us know what that's called. It's the golf. What is your golf score? Is it score?
I should know.
Girl, I need you all to help us out. Anyways, they spend all that money on Golf Girl and Tea Times and the XYZ, and they have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
If you want to spend money and invest in a book, and you really it's fine.
Yeah.
But just know you're going to do that.
Yeah.
That's going to cost you money.
Yeah. So let's talk about investing in original work, because that's a question I get a lot. So right now I do primarily do a lot of work for clients. This is one of my main and only current original pieces of work that I do with the podcast. But I want to get into funding my own original film projects and things like that.
Good.
And I think for artists and creative entrepreneurs, obviously myself being a good example of that, getting back to funding our own original and creative projects can be a journey, right? And I think people also underestimate how much it costs to self-fund or to fund creative works, right, on a decent scale, right? So like a book, like a short film, and you should see the numbers that I see people throwing out very casually. I'm talking like $500,000 for a feature film, $3 million for a feature film, like. You would think, oh, you can just make this for then when you start to hear those numbers, then that's what it makes you start to look at people crazy when people think that like, oh, can you write this for 2 cents a word? And it's like, how
do you reconcile that?
Yeah, like how low skill do you think this is, or how unskilled do you think I am that I can just do, you know what I mean? Like that is just take 2 seconds and this is all this is about, and this is just going to blow up and it's going to be great and everybody's going to be searching for this and all these things. And it's like, no, not exactly. That's not all that goes into making a great book and writing a great landing page and marketing a book well and marketing a film well, or whatever the project is, let's say a photo book or something. It takes a lot of work to fund creative projects and a lot of energy to fund creative projects. So for you, obviously the book was a fun project, but even going now into your second book that you're currently writing, as you're thinking about, okay, now I'm doing this kind of solo, like what is this going to cost me and take away from my other parts of my business, and what, do I want to make on this book? How much do I want to put in on this book? What has been that creative process like going towards that alone?
When you started asking this question, I was like, do we have a part 2 of this podcast? I was like, this question alone is I'm gonna share some things, but it's really interesting because when we start to talk about money, that gets people nervous. They don't want to talk about it. I'm very open about money. Yeah. I just think in our community especially, we got to stop that. Yeah. We have to be honest about what we need, what we can't do, our limitations. We all want to be like, I got it, and we throw it on a card. And sometimes you need to, as long as you can bridge to get, sometimes we have to do what we have to do, but we don't talk honestly about money and see credit as not real. And so I am very sensitive about this topic because it is an investment. We do spend, so last year I put my cup down for this. Hold on now, we're going to talk about this. But rather than think about the next book that I'm writing, I think it's a good case study is the Reinvention Road Trip program that we developed. Okay. Because, you can have a brand on Instagram and Twitter and all the things, and your women's empowerment, but that's great. I got great quotes and I'm doing public speaking. My public speaking gigs cannot afford, I cannot afford, like my lifestyle needs more than just the couple thousand here, 1,000 there. So I can't make it on public speaking. So our team, and I brought in somebody who would support me, and we worked out a contract or whatever, so he's getting like revenue share on the back end, right? But gave me his expertise up front. So you have to have relationships, people with relationships to bring in when you want to get creative and you want to expand your business. And I got a contract during COVID. I was making pretty good money. I'm making good money, but in COVID, I got a really lovely contract that I reserved. I reserved to make a personal investment into a product, so that we weren't just Jess's brand, where she running around talking and doing things and inspiring women, which is great. But like, how do you help transform them? What is your differential value proposition for your business? We didn't have a product. So we spent all of last year, starting in this time last year, so it's been 1 year, developing a product, and I had to hire a team. And I spent $80,000. We just did our numbers. $80,000 of my own money that I didn't have the year before but I had a contract that I was able to set aside. This is what I want to say to folks. Like, you have to be strategic and intentional. You take a small business loan, you ask friends and family, you take money out of your own pocket that could have gone to my son's college tuition, and I invested it into this business so that I could develop a product. And now the product is paying us back because we launched it in January. But do you think that for 9 months of last year, every bill I was paying and this product wasn't developed, it wasn't written, we were in strategy meetings, we were working on it, we were beta testing it, we were getting the feedback, we were refining it, we were publishing a workbook, we were getting the workbook written, we were developing illustrations. People were getting paid for that. I wasn't, but people were, because they were working towards a common goal and common vision to create original content. It's my property. But you have to. It is bigger than, I love that you asked this question, because it is bigger than the influencer brand that we see. What else is there? What's your tangible? What can I buy from you?
Exactly.
What can I buy from you? I love you. I love what you're showing me on Instagram. Now, how do I stay connected to you? What is it? And if you're not willing to figure out ways, cutting back at the house, figuring out what your budget is, figuring out, getting your credit straight so you can get a little loan. If you believe in yourself deeply that this product, whatever you're going to develop, can sell, and you test the market, because we beta tested. We didn't just assume that I knew everything, right? We asked people. We took them through a program and sampled it and then refined it. And we have a better version today than we did in the fall. But it took resources. And I don't think people realize it. They just see you out there. They don't realize that you put your actual whole annual salary for middle America on the line to develop a thing, and you taking a risk. That takes guts, man. I mean, that's entrepreneurship. So
R&D, creative R&D, like it's
creative R&D. I love that. That's what she said. Simplified it.
Creative R&D. But I mean, like, when I'm thinking about creating a course, it's like, I know exactly what you like. This is going to take time. It's not just me sitting in front of a camera, making videos and then just like, okay, cool. I package this together on whatever Teachable, Thinkific, come buy this. Like, no, I need to make sure that people actually want this. People actually care about this. People actually finding value for this. Is there a better way that I can package this and put this together in a way that people will find value? And then, okay, now that I've done that, how do I retarget this to people who would benefit from this the most, whether that is the same as I thought originally or not. And that course is, yes, it is a package that people can buy. A book is a package that people can buy. And cohort-based courses, and we don't have time to get into this, but they are becoming increasingly popular because, again, in contrast or comparison to a self-paced course, you can charge a higher amount for a cohort-based course. One, because of that classroom-like feel, and two, because you're giving them greater access to you as a person.
1,000%.
Which is what people want, right? They want to.
Because we have async and no one buys it. Everybody wants synchronous. They want the course with me. They want the cohort. See? We have async. It's available, but people are like, wait, but then what don't I get? You don't get access to your cohort every single day, especially now in COVID, right? Everybody wants to be connected. And you don't get me once a week for 45 minutes where we download the week. And they're like, oh, well, of course. I mean, no one. I'm telling you, not one person.
Literally.
And when our course is $750 to $1,750. That's the async is I don't even know. That's how much it sells in 0 time. I think it's $450. But and imagine that times 10. Start doing the math on a course that's like $750 times 10 every single month. So that's $7,500 a month on a thing that you built one time and you spend 45 minutes a week on. It's worth it. If you got 20 people, that's $15,000 a month. So like you get the math, right?
Right. It starts to add up.
But you have to put the time and the money behind it to build the dream of that kind of revenue, so that you don't have to work as hard, and you can shift shift the creative energy into something else. Like you could build a new project, get that one going, shift and build something new. And I don't, because we've covered so much territory here, I don't even know what people are like. They're probably like, what's happening? But the other thing when I think about you developing your course, which is exciting, is you you can build a thing, but will they come? Like, are they gonna, do you have an audience to drop it on?
Right.
And so that was the other thing that we spent time on, is that while we were creating a program and developing the resources to support the program, we started to talk to our audience, the women that I wanted to come into this cohort. And I didn't say buy a thing. I didn't say buy a thing for a year, which is probably debatable, right? You may want to do it sooner. But we just consistently messaged to our audience, gave them free access to things, had little workshops, newsletters every week, start to build the audience so that when you do have something to offer them, they want to be a part of it. They enjoy you. They love you. They want to be a part of your community. And they're like, oh, good, Jess has a thing that I can buy into. So that you're not trying to fill a cohort, scramble to fill a cohort. It's coming because you invested in your audience.
Yeah.
So will be the next. So the people, that costs money too.
Yeah.
You have to, and consistency.
Yeah. Personal brand, and I know people hate this term personal branding, but you can also call it a creative platform, if you will, where you're just growing your audience online of people who could potentially buy into whatever it is you're selling at some point whenever you have that product. But that's I just don't see how in this day and age you can have one without the other. Like, you can have the in-person without the online, you can. Obviously, somebody from Gen Z is going to come from me. I know it. But what I'm saying is, that if you want it to be sustainable in the long run.
That's the word.
Yeah.
That's it. It's sustainability. You can do anything. That's why I tell people to talk about grit, and that whole word's getting pulled apart these days. But that's fine. But grit is like perseverance meets passion over time. Mm-hmm. Over time.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're demonstrating is this was not overnight success. This is actual strategic planning. It is real investment. It's nights where you feel like you don't want to do a thing and you're like, let me just go back to corporate America and just make my little 6 figures and be done with it, or whatever. Let me get my benefits from whoever. Right? You sometimes you don't want to.
Yeah.
But the grit, that perseverance plus your passion over time is what the people, the millennial, whoever you said was going to come for you, Gen Z, who are these influencers who aren't doing a whole lot. It's how do you take it to the next level with the sustainability?
Yeah.
We will, my hope, I'm building a sustainable brand. I'm not building I hope you like me today and forget about me by Christmas.
Yeah.
I hope that you like me today, you love me by Christmas, you want to be a part of our community this time next year, that you're wanting more and you're an ambassador for me.
Yeah.
That's what I want, and that your lives are changed and transformed, because ultimately that's what we're doing here, honestly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have invested that kind of money in the business model.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, the potential to make $50,000 a month. No, ma'am, I am not throwing $80,000 at the potential to do a thing if it's not matched with mission.
Yeah.
Because I won't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'll give up. So, there's a lot there. The formula is interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. We've delved into a lot. I don't know.
Girl, I don't even know. What are these show notes going to look like? I don't even know.
I don't know. There could be a whole part 2, and we may have Jess back if you guys tell me you want her back, in the comments. But in the meantime, how can people find you online, Jess?
Yes. Well, first of all, make sure you go get your lovely mug. We want to support our friend Honey Hustle. I love this. Thank you as a gift.
Absolutely.
And you can find me. It's very easy. My name is Jess Averhart, and so everything out there is under my name. So it's JessAverhart.com. I'm at Jess Averhart on Instagram, LinkedIn, and then from those platforms you can spin out. You'll see our other website, which is reinventionroadtrip.com, but you can get there from JessAverhart.com. So it makes it very simple. And follow me. Obviously, I do a lot of work on Instagram, as we all do, that kind of keep you up to date on what's happening. But we're expanding our community and would love to have you join us.
Yeah, absolutely. Heard it here first. Thank you again, Jess, so much for
this was great.
Talking about all the things. I don't know. I didn't know it was going to go there, but I'm happy that it did.
Yeah, I don't know if we met all the outcomes, but we went in places we were like, oh, wait, make a right turn real quick. Okay, back on the road. This was good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.